reporting for the Daily Caller. I'm at this Home 2 Suites by the Hilton at St. Paul, and a huge group of protesters are trying to enter that hotel. They believe ICE agents are staying there. Check out this scene here. They kind of barricaded the road. I don't see any local law enforcement on the scene, but take a look at this. We'll see if authorities move in to make arrests, but as of right now, we don't see any.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're looking at is the scene over in Minnesota last night following the deadly shooting that ended up taking place over this weekend. A bunch of people are up in arms about it. Even people that are on the side of law enforcement most of the time are looking at this one and they're going, I don't know about this. This looks like murder. This looks like manslaughter. And let me tell you how blessed I am to be able to sit in this position and actually break this down for you guys so you guys can actually know what's going on and understand what's behind everything and actually get the truth, because there's a lot of these clips out there that are just kind of floating around, some of them with people that are totally beheaded, that have been AI generated, trying to make you think that you know what's going on when the reality is you don't. Also, Tim Walz ended up activating the Minnesota National Guard. They're busy outside of the Whipple building handing out donuts to protesters and coffee. Why did Tim Walz do that? Well, so he could relieve the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department so that they could go deal with a lot of the unrest. Last night at the Home 2 Suites over in St. Paul, just like you guys saw, the entire building got overran. Multiple federal agents were assaulted. State police ended up responding. Local police ended up responding. Other state officials ended up responding. And still, the feds had to deploy more agents on the scene to get the place under control. And after they did that, guess what? The local PD decided that they'd leave and left the federal agents freaking stranded again. It's nuts what's going on over there. Absolutely nuts. Pam Bondi came out over the weekend, said that they are absolutely going to continue to pursue charges against Don Lemon for his role in the weekend prior, what took place over inside of the church. And even after the shooting, if you guys haven't seen the videos, you will, coming up here in just a second. There is no other way to cover this story than to give you guys the honest to God's truth about what was taking place. I'm going to explain to you the different legal aspects that go into the shooting. All right. What the judges, what the investigators are going to be looking at. Cause first it's going to go through the investigatory process, right? So what the investigators are going to be looking at, if it goes to trial, what the judges are going to be looking at, what the jury is going to be instructed to look at, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But last night we had all of that violence go off. So I'm going to show you guys different angles, probably some that you haven't seen before. And there's no other way than to cover this and to let you guys know that regardless of what side of the freaking story you fall on, whether you're on the side of the feds or whether you're on the side of, the guy that ended up getting killed, well, somebody's getting upset. By the end of the show, somebody's going to be upset. And before I get into that, obviously, if you guys haven't been following this is the Minneapolis police chief. This is actually a statement that he ended up making on the shooting and what was taking place out there. And I think before I get into the shooting, it's important to play this video so that, one, you're going to listen to actual facts about what they're going to be looking at when it comes down to the shooting before we look at the violence that took place last night. But it's important that you guys listen to what this chief ended up saying and understand why people are acting the way they're acting in Minnesota.
Well, I've seen the videos just as thousands of people around the country have, and the videos speak for themselves. I think it's deeply concerning, the things that are being said. This is an individual that was a city resident. It appears that he was present, exercising his First Amendment rights to record law enforcement activity, and also exercising his Second Amendment rights to lawfully be armed in a public space in the city.
I'm going to pause it right there. Exercising your First Amendment rights. You can do that legally. But the moment you start doing things illegally while exercising a right doesn't mean you get to break the law. And I want you to remember that going into this next video. And so that is the first, what I would call false and or misleading statement by this police chief. Now, he can break the law by doing several things and still be okay exercising his Second Amendment right. But it's important to understand that while he was exercising his Second Amendment right, he was still breaking the law, and some of it violently and conducting violent felonies.
So I think very obviously there are serious questions that are being raised. And I think the greater issue is, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there is so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
And he's right. At this point, it doesn't matter if it was justified because of statements like that you just made, which was he was out there exercising his First and his Second Amendment rights, and people are outraged that he got killed because you're painting it unlike I just did. You can claim you're exercising your First Amendment right, and you can claim you're exercising your Second Amendment right. As your First Amendment right, if you're breaking a non-violent law, like a non-victim-ish type law, it's not such a big deal. But once you go into violence and you start committing violent felonies, all of a sudden we have a completely different scenario that plays out. Abby says, good morning. What a wild weekend of breaking news. This signal thing is absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah, we'll get into that as well.
What do you mean it doesn't matter at this point? You mean the situation on the ground is already, the impression is left?
People have had enough. This is the third shooting now in less than 3 weeks. The Minneapolis Police Department went the entire year last year recovering about 900 guns from the street, arresting hundreds and hundreds of violent offenders, and we didn't shoot anyone. And now this is the second American.
Okay, I'm looking at the comments. You guys are asking what law did he break and who did he assault? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you guys exactly who he assaulted and why it's a felony. You're about to see it. So calm down and wait for it to come. Dylan McClone coming in giving out 5 Speak the Truth memberships.
Citizen that's been killed. It's the third shooting within 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. People have been speaking out, saying that this was going to happen again. And I think everyone is kind of waiting for folks on both sides to come together and just figure this thing out. This is not sustainable. This police department has only 600 police officers. We are stretched incredibly thin. This is taking an enormous toll trying to manage all of this chaos on top of having to be the police department for a major city. It's too much.
Okay. So there we go. There we have his full statement. I love reading comments like that from Dwayne that says, Matt, I bought silver because of you. I'm up $8,000 today. Dude, that's amazing. I'm very, very happy for you. And for people that didn't listen, and I mean, I'm going to get into that. Maybe not today, but a little bit deeper. I will absolutely get into that. This is the first video I'm going to play for you guys that a lot of you likely haven't seen yet. It is and I'm going to do my best to do this chronologically for you so that you can understand what's kind of going on in this video. So I'm going to do my best to do this chronologically for you. First image that I'm able to actually go over, identify, and put up on the screen for you guys before all this went down. And it's going to be very, very small, but it's going to be this one. And this is of the 2 ladies that were involved in the incident, all right, along with the suspect / victim, depending on what side of this you're going to fall on. All right, those 2 ladies are spotted and seen standing directly outside of one of the ICE vehicles in the middle of the road with their phones out. Now, those officers standing outside of their vehicle or sitting outside of their vehicle as they're making entry and getting in and out, if they're conducting official business, if they're conducting official law enforcement business, all right, they do have the ability to control that scene. So first, I would point out is that these ladies are breaking likely municipal and or state ordinance by standing in the middle of the road. Can a federal law enforcement officer enforce that particular ordinance? No. But can they, for reasons of officer safety as ruled by the Supreme Court, or by, security of the crime scene, or if they have a suspect in custody, can they tell people to move back legally in order to control that area? And the answer to that is yes. So if they're telling people to get back and to move away for officer safety, or because they have a suspect in custody, or because they have a crime scene they're about to secure, whatever the case may be, if they're giving out lawful orders, the people are supposed to follow them. So one, you have people, before we even start this, you have people that are exercising their First Amendment right while breaking state and local ordinance, undoubtedly by standing in the middle of the road and doing that, right? That doesn't give you a right to break the law. But two, you also have what's going to be appeared, and you're going to see it here in a second, appears to be people violating further law by disobeying what would be a lawful order, whether you like it or not. So here is the video that most of you haven't seen. This was a drive-by that actually occurred that captured that altercation prior to it going down. DKK says, just rewatched the 12-minute video segment of the 1984 Yuri Bezmenov interview, and it's nuts how well it fits current events in America. It's freaking wild. Thank you very much for bringing that up. But no time to talk about that right now. So this is a vehicle that was passing by. On the right side, just to kind of orient you guys as we get into it, right here in this brown jacket, right here in the middle, what I'm running the cursor over, this is going to be the guy that ended up getting killed. This is going to be a federal agent. And this is going to be the two ladies that I just pointed out prior to. So here we have this guy coming out into the middle of the road. He wasn't pictured in the middle of the road before. So it would be assumed as we start to play this video that after the officer started telling those ladies to move back, he entered the roadway, because in the previous photograph, he wasn't out there. And I'm assuming only a couple seconds have passed in between point A and point B.
Go around.
Okay. Now, after that, they end up driving past him. If we go back and we take a look here as he's going past, one, you have the officer standing there making contact with him at the very beginning of the video. So here you have the officer making contact with him. You can see later on in the video, there it is. That door is still open. So likely that officer ended up getting out of the vehicle in order to tell those ladies to get back, because there's those two ladies. And now he has positioned himself right there. That is an assumption on my behalf that he left the side of the street when the officers came out and he confronted the officers. So is this exercising his First Amendment right? Again, no, at least not in a lawful manner. Exercising his First Amendment right would have been doing it by the sidewalk and not intervening at this point, which would be a lawful contact by the federal agents. As the video progresses and it continues to go on, you can't hear a word that anybody else is saying. You see this other agent come out, and we can presume that they were telling him to move back, because at this point, we now see the officer make physical contact with him and begin to push him back out of the road. So at this point, you now have the officer pushing the suspect back out of the road, which means they would have likely given him a verbal command prior to, which he did not obey. At that point, he is disobeying a lawful order. They do have a right to detain him at a minimum at this point, if not arrest, situation dependent. Either way, they're clearing the roadway and they're maintaining their officer's safety and distance from that vehicle and suspect or whoever it is, the detainee. I don't know what they have going on in the back of that vehicle. Either way, these orders, regardless, should be presumed lawful, and the citizens are supposed to obey them. You don't get to have a kangaroo court on the side of the road. And again, these are things that have been affirmed. Right? These are things that have been affirmed in courts of law. Right? That's why when you look at the law, disobeying lawful orders is out there. Whether or not you get arrested for it, etc., when it goes down to, let's say they arrest you, the fruit of the poisonous tree can apply, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, and your charges will get thrown out later on. If they had no reason to be there and do that, that's when your charges get thrown out in a court of law, not here. And that's something that all courts have affirmed over time. You don't get to do that. That's not how it works. Now, you can see them then start pushing the gentleman back onto the side of the road. He's not reaching for anything. He's not doing anything. He's got a knife hand. It looks like he's yelling at the guy, talking a little aggressively. No idea. His video is going to either confirm or deny a lot of the things I just ended up stating as they go past. And here you can see those two ladies and the other federal officer as we slow it down and go past it. So that's that video. So did they have a lawful reason to contact him? It would appear so. Just on face value of everything that we can see, yes, it appears that they had a lawful reason to contact him and start pushing him back. Then we get into the next video, which I'm going to put out here. This is the one that most people have seen so far, and it starts off with him out in the middle of the road. I'm going to let it roll for a sec. You can see him out in the middle of the road, taunting and doing his thing, running around with his camera, going up over there, yelling. Then it cuts away to this portion. We're going to watch the whole thing in just a sec. For some reason, I grabbed the wrong clip. Then it cuts away to that portion. You can see that officer pushes this lady back. Now, that action could be presumed to be excessive force. However, which is why the video is cut in the way it is, that's not the reason I put this up here. You can presume that that is excessive force if you would like. However, you also don't know whether or not it is, because the officer has given multiple commands at that point in order to make them move back. He's instructed them to move back. He's used physical force against the guy that ended up getting killed, telling him to move back, pushing him back off the road. And now you have him pushing this lady. And this is where this guy commits a felony. Right there. At that point, he ended up pushing that officer and committing a felony and getting sprayed in the face, which, I mean, most of you guys probably didn't even notice. All right. So here, let's get it up on the screen again. I want to, nope, that's not the one I want to have on the screen. Sorry, I have so many different clips of this garbage. It's not even funny. And I know a lot of you guys have seen these things over and over. So I just want to throw it back. The guy clearly, watch, boom, pushes. And then he ends up getting sprayed all over the face. All right. So, oh, you guys couldn't see that. God, man, Matt's just not on his A game today. There you have him out there doing his thing. Something else happened after the pushback because now he's doing something else. There's that. He pushes that officer, then he gets sprayed in the face. There's another angle of that video that clearly shows he ends up pushing the officer. There's no point in me even sitting here and arguing over that. When you push a federal law enforcement officer, it is a felony, all right? Like when you end up pushing any law enforcement officer, when you assault them, it's a felony, period. End of discussion. So now he's committing a felony while carrying a firearm. This next video that we're going to put up, I'm going to play this one through. All right. This is a little bit more clear. It's got a little bit more, stuff on it as we continue to go through. So there you see them fighting. You see them attempting to gain control. There's another angle of this. You see the guy trying to pull his legs out to get him down, but he's fighting him really hard in order to do it. All right. You also see the other two idiots just hanging out over here off to the side. Now, we hear the officer shouting, he's got a gun, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. This officer, right prior to everybody shouting he has a gun, I want you to pay attention to where he's looking. This is likely the officer that fired the first shot of them screaming he's got a gun. He's paying attention to this scene over here, kind of watching the backs of these officers, okay? And they start screaming he's got a gun. This is the guy that ends up taking the pistol off of him that you guys typically end up seeing, right? You guys have all seen the videos of this officer removing the pistol off of his body. This guy that's here has lots of things going in through his head, and I'm going to walk you guys through it in just a sec. At that point, prior to this pistol being removed, you see this guy. He had something else in his hand. I'm going to go back and play it. All right. He's got probably like a small can of pepper spray or something in his hand, and you see him switch hands with it and go to draw his pistol at that point. And he clears holster. Now, that's very important. That's very, very important. That firearm was not removed from his body at the time this guy made the decision that lethal force may be needed immediately, if not in the very near future. As soon as that happens, he then moves to a different location to get behind the guy's back with the pistol angled down, and that's when we hear that first shot. And you actually see his arm shake. So it's be my belief that this guy is the one that fired the shot into the back of this guy, like in a downward angle. Watch it again. Pretty clear at that point. So we go back. Guy's not paying attention. He's watching the other guys. Here's he's got a gun, sees the gun, goes, oh shit, grabs his pistol, starts moving around, shoots the dude. At least one time, Maybe he missed him. Maybe he hit him. I don't know. Either way, the angle in which he chose to fire his weapon, absolutely retarded in my opinion. The guy's an idiot for discharging his firearm at that location, unless he felt like he was going to do less damage than the suspect could have done, and he needed to do it. And it depends on the angle in which he directed it at. I couldn't see it. Then continues to shoot a couple more times. They back away. There's another video that I'm not going to play for YouTube purposes, which shows several federal agents backing up and then shooting more. That I will also explain here in just a second. I want to go through some of these super chats as we continue to dive into this a little bit deeper. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right. We've got Dalton Wilson that says, grown men in full kit don't need to TOSS that woman around. If you are that threatened and scared, you shouldn't be in the profession. Well, you can say that he didn't have to toss that woman around. It's icy condition. He goes and he pushes her. It's not tossing. He pushed her and she fell. She's off-centered. She's a big woman. Let's be honest about that shove. That woman, right, that he ended up shoving, it's not like she's freaking 40 pounds, all right, when we take a look at it and how big that woman is. It's not like she's a tiny little girl. So let's address this. He's not tossing her around. She's a big old girl, and she's violated several times. He put his hands and pushed, and his arms were fully extended when he made contact with her. It's not like he freaking gave her the shove of a lifetime. She played that same crap that basketball players do, which is why I hate the NBA, where they get touched and they fall over and they're, He didn't freaking excessively shove her. He used force, which he was authorized to do. She's unstable on her feet. You can see how she went. He pushed her over her own hips and she fell down. That's not tossing her around. And just because she's a woman doesn't mean that she is any less entitled to use of force than a grown man would be. Period. That's legal. You might not like it. That fits into the lawful but awful category, in my opinion. Pat Loudon says, police chief said they are spread thin and need help. Perfect time for the Insurrection Act. At this rate, chaos will only increase unless taken care of. I agree with that situation. 1,000%. Let's see here. We go back a little bit more. Please, all right, did I miss one? I don't think I missed a super chat. I think I'm caught up on him. If I miss some, you guys gotta let me know. All right, now the 320, the SIG that got taken off the guy, has been known to have numerous malfunctions. There is, I can probably go find the clip of people saying that the federal officers ended up discharging the weapon. So if I grab that, because again, it's looking at timing in the different videos and everything that goes off. Officer, pistol, removed, slide. There is plenty of these videos now that people have taken that show, like this one here, is the officer that ended up removing the pistol. When you take this video and you slow it down, it does appear as if the slide ended up going backwards. Now, this is a very clear image of the pistol itself, and he was running into people, and there was people over there by him, all right? This is the pistol that he ended up pulling off the guy. And one of the stills, if we can go grab it real quick, in the video of him going backwards, the slide appears to be to the rear. Now, it is possible that the pistol got bumped and went off. Those SIGs, here we go. Here's what I'm looking at. You guys can see it here. It does appear as if that round ended up getting like bumped off and going off. You guys see that slide go back like that? This is why you need to wait for facts of cases to come out before we start damning people. Because that officer that ended up pulling the trigger is going to be judged off, one, what he was aware of at the time. Did he feel as if there was a threat to actually, be there at the scene? So what did the officer know? Well, the officer knew he was armed. Whether or not he saw the pistol, and I believe he did. Do I believe he saw the pistol removed? It's possible he saw the pistol removed. I don't think he did, but it is possible he saw the pistol removed. And you have to remember that just because a firearm is removed off somebody doesn't mean they don't have another. This is a firearm. This is a Glock 26. This is also a firearm. This is a 22 long rifle pen gun. Believe it or not, this is also a firearm. I've showed this on the channel before. A lot of you guys might not like it, but this is also a firearm, and these things are on the streets. People also carry knives. They carry several firearms on them. I know lots of people that carry 2 firearms. So let's say he saw 1 firearm removed off the suspect. That doesn't mean that the suspect's not carrying 2 firearms. Is it reasonable for the officer to assume that he had a second firearm on him or could have possibly had a second firearm on him? Yes, it is. Is it reasonable to assume that he was carrying it in his center waistband, which he was trying to keep? Yes, it is. The fact that he did or did not see that gun being removed is irrelevant, in my opinion, because he could have easily believed that he had another one. Now, people that are not in the firearms community do not know a lot about the frickin' SIGs, particularly that model and the issues in which they have. It's a fact. Now, the video I'm about to show you is one of the known issues with that particular firearm. And it's important because if that officer at the time he pulled the trigger heard a gunshot, and for those of you that haven't been in an urban environment, hadn't had gunshots going off around, particularly in close proximity to you, particularly in those situations, it's hard for him to realize where the shot emanated from. He could have thought that that shot came from the suspect. Here's why.
Put some input into the slide somewhere. Will it go off again? Will it release? Let's see. That's 3 in a row. Let me take the screw out.
Now, the purpose of him having that screw in there is to barely move the trigger. So the issue with this particular firearm is when the trigger is slightly depressed. It has been moved just a tiny bit. When that slide is bumped, it goes off.
Number 4. Let's try it again. Let me show you. Fully functioning striker safety. All right. Should we do it with the magazine again? Let's put the magazine back in, and then we'll try the last one with the magazine out. Handy dandy trigger input tool. We are going to try to, dang, sorry about that. I'm trying to get over a sinus thing and a cough. We're going to try to simulate all right, here we go. Again, we are roughly, as we saw on the tabletop, I'm guessing we're roughly 1 millimeter to less than 1 millimeter of engagement on that trigger. And let's see if we can get it to go off again.
And as some of you guys have stated in the comment section, they are known to go off without the trigger even being manipulated 1 millimeter. It does happen with these particular firearms. People have actually lost their lives over this. It's a huge black eye for SIG. Very huge black eye for SIG that this platform has that issue. So if this guy had that firearm on him, and we go back, and like I showed you guys in that other image, trying to remember what I did with it, when it was very clear that the officer didn't even engage the trigger on that firearm, that he was holding it down below the actual trigger well. His fingers were nowhere near that trigger. And if it went off, that's another black eye on SIG. I don't own one for that particular reason. I don't like them. All right. It's too big of a risk, in my opinion, for anybody to have. So if it went off, it is reasonable for that officer to assume, in my opinion, it came either A, from the suspect, or B, from a fellow officer engaging the suspect because of what they saw. And a lot of you guys can scream BS, you can scream whatever you want, But again, that officer is judged on what he knew at the time. What he knew at the time and his perception of a threat. And what we have, whether you like it or not, the facts of the case are you have a man who was armed, who committed a violent felony against a federal law enforcement officer that was resisting arrest, that was known to be armed to that officer, and very likely there is a gunshot that ended up occurring prior to the guy being shot. If we're going to subscribe that it was the SIG that ended up going off first, causing that federal officer to fire. It's pretty simple. And a lot of people like to take this and throw it way out of character, way out of proportion. You can take as much video evidence as you want, and you could watch it time and time again after the fact. And maybe that'll give you some insight to what the officer did know at the time. Like I said, this is going to offend a lot of people. The fact is that that is what the officer is judged on, what he knew at the time. And what he knew at the time was that the suspect was armed, that the suspect was resisting arrest. He might not have known that he assaulted the other agent, but he knows that he's armed and he's resisting arrest. He knows, and we can see it through several other videos, the suspect trying to maintain his base and trying to get back to his center waistband. And it certainly appears as if that's when he ended up getting shot. Now, the other question goes into the officers that were backing away and that were backing away while shooting as the guy is laying on the ground. Again, you might not like this information. If there was one argument for a bad shoot, I would argue it's after the initial shots went off. If there is a solid argument for a bad shoot, in my opinion, it is after the initial shots went off as the officers were backing away and they started shooting more. But I'm going to give you the other side of it. I just told you that, in my opinion, is the solid argument for a bad shoot. The officers that were backing away and continued to dump rounds into them after the fact. Now, there's videos afterwards that came out where you can hear the officers saying, "Where's the gun? Where's the gun?" Which shows they didn't know the gun wasn't on him at the time or that he didn't have the firearm. But here's the other thing. And people hate this information, but there's a reason places like the Force Science Institute exist. Force Science Institute has done studies over the years of police body cam footage. They've done studies over the years of combat footage. I've referenced them several different times. And I want you guys to think of this in this manner. You have people that operate in the green, the amber, red, and black. This is often trained when it goes into force on force situations. When you're in the green, all right, this is your alert status. When you are in the green, that means you are at home, peaceful. You're not worried about anybody harming you. You're just chilling. When you're in the amber, it's often described as like these officers sitting inside their vehicles or a cop that's out on patrol when they're doing different things. That amber status can still exist depending on how seasoned the officer is and how good they are at controlling their stuff when they're talking to suspects that are resisting arrest, et cetera, et cetera. They can remain in amber. That's a good place for you to be. You got a little bit of adrenaline kind of going, got a little bit of cortisol in your system, not a lot, but it's under control. Red goes into when you have adrenaline that starts flowing. The first thing that ends up happening, generally speaking, is tunnel vision and hearing. People start to get tunnel vision and their auditory exclusion really starts to kick in. Why? Because that mass flow of adrenaline has them focused on the threat. And in the case, this is how it would apply, and this is what's going to be testified in court. I freaking guarantee it. If for some reason this even goes to court. But in that case, as this is going on, for this officer right here, as he notices what's happening, right? And we could put it in slow-mo for you guys and play it. It is possible that this officer immediately went from amber to red the moment someone shouted gun, and he gets tunnel vision. Now, what do people focus on? What are they trained to focus on in tunnel vision mode? What do? Their intended target, their line of fire, and what they intend on shooting. And I bring this up for a particular reason. Yes, he should be looking at the suspect's hands. He should be watching the firearm itself or any other potential threats that come through. But what ends up happening because of the way people are trained and everything that goes into it with that tunnel vision is they focus on their target. So at this time, when he goes to move to his holster, there is a solid probability that he made the decision that lethal force might necessarily be authorized and used, and he's looking for a clear line of fire, and it's not until he hears that SIG go off that he pulls the trigger. So as you continue to play it and you see that, that's what we see. We see him following his gun straight into the small of the guy's back when that shooting starts to occur. That would be that tunnel vision that we're talking about. Firearm gets removed, the guy goes around, shot gets fired. It's pretty cut and dry. There is another case that goes into the black. All right. When you go into the black, you pretty much lose all control. You're not really seeing anything. You have no idea what's going on. Now, those officers that are backing away could be you're less trained, you're inexperienced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They could have made the decision to pull and fire their guns the moment they got told to do that. And when you watch that portion of the shooting, what you see is those officers that are tracking him as he's going down with their guns out, trying to acquire a target. They decided that lethal force had to go. That's going to be their argument on that side of that. So on the bad shoot side of the house, I would say the officers that are backing away, that are continuing to mag dump into the guy, I could see that all day long. I could see that being a valid argument in a court, and those guys getting fired, getting relieved, like going to trial for that use of force. But the initial shot that was fired, I do not see that. Ethel says, did he have 2 clips in his belt? In a split second, could it look like the butt of a gun? Yeah, he had 2 magazines, and in that type of a situation, depending on the amount of blood flow pumping through his body and what he was envisioning, it certainly could seem to him as if it was another firearm. Yes, absolutely. That is a possibility. Thumper says, don't harass law enforcement and stalk them and have them on edge, fearing for their safety 24/7 and just leave them alone, and stuff like this might not happen. Also an accurate statement. Also a very accurate statement. Yeah, if you're not harassing law enforcement and shouting at them and doing all of that stuff, yeah. Also, if you're just obeying the law, if you're following lawful orders, that situation wouldn't have happened. If he would have listened to him the first time they told him to get out of the street and stand there, he could have continued to exercise his First Amendment right. Nobody would have been arresting him. Nobody would have done crap. Viper says, let's not forget that the Border Patrol agent that fired first, according to BP Commander Bavino, is an 8-year agent, so it's not a rookie. Bingo. Just because he's an 8-year agent, though, doesn't mean that he's been in extremely stressful situations where he's learned to control that. Oftentimes people cite stress inoculation inside of training where they're causing them to do physical exercise, going back and forth and yelling. None of that compares to the stress that somebody faces in a life or death situation. One is physical exhaustion and the other is actual stress, right? Actual fear of life, that fight or flight instinct kicking in. That fear of life is what actually causes that massive surge of adrenaline, which drastically changes. And there's no way to actually put that realistically into training. And so people will often argue in court that, well, didn't you have stress inoculation training? That's what it's called, but it ain't stress inoculation. It's physical exertion and people yelling at you, trying to make your life stressful. I'm telling you right now, after being like, it doesn't compare. I've been in combat. I've been in gunfights. I've been in close engagements. I've been there, done that. And then also went through basic law enforcement training and SWAT. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't equate. Not even remotely close. I don't care what anybody tells you. It's not the same. So, and people can spend years on the force and never pull their firearm out. I mean, that's just the way it goes. If you guys agree with me, if you've been through the same type of stuff that I just described, by all means, throw it down in the chat. But to me, it's absolutely, it's just not the same. And so I think for those reasons, the first officer likely is going to end up getting off. And, the other officers that were pulling the trigger after the fact are probably going to get looked at a hell of a lot harder. You might not like that, but it's just the facts. Cam Higbee ended up putting this out. The guy from the shooting was found to be inside of this signal call, allegedly part of this agitator group.
Obviously, this is a somber day. We had another ICE documenter responder murdered yesterday in Minneapolis. We are grappling. Obviously, this is...
So, just because she said that he was one of theirs doesn't mean he was. There's lots of pictures floating around the internet right now of this guy cross-dressing as trans. There's lots of pictures floating around of him as a nurse. All sorts of stuff that are out there right now about this guy. I don't care about any of that because it doesn't matter. Even if he was in this group, it legally doesn't matter. What legally matters is everything I just went over with you guys and a hell of a lot more. Thrash Fice. Unfortunate situation, but he was illegally carrying a concealed weapon, did not announce he was carrying. You need ID when you concealed carry. Yep, you need ID on you. He didn't have it. He also didn't have his permit on him from the best of my understanding. But again, that's still not a reason for an officer to engage him, right? Like, that's totally irrelevant when it goes down to the use of force that we just talked about. You could use that maybe to talk about motive or whatever, but it's totally irrelevant when it goes down to the use of force. But you're absolutely correct. If he, in fact, did not have identification on him, he was not legally carrying in that state. R. White says, does anyone see that a protester bit off part of an HSI officer's finger? Yep, that happened. It sure did. It sure happened over the weekend. 100%. Now, what we're going to take a look at is the result of that going into the evening. This is the hotel that I told you guys about from earlier on, the Home 2 Suites in St. Paul. So this portion of the video that I'm showing you guys is after the fact. You can see a local police officer right there standing at the entrance of the place. You still have people that are over there walking behind it. Now, that's important. Before I get into it, it is very important for me to show you guys this, which is going to be Minnesota National Guard was actually deployed yesterday. I'm not making this up. They were sent over to the Whipple building, and I'm going to show you what Tim Walz's response is. Here you got the LMTVs pulling into the ICE facility. Excuse me. I was able to identify the unit. I'll show it to you guys here in just a second. They ended up going there about an hour south. It is the 224th Transportation Company. Reason you know that's the 224th Transportation Company is because of the stamping, right, or the lettering right here on the front of the vehicle, the way they go about lettering those vehicles. So you see them moving in. Now, yesterday, Tim Walz activated the National Guard in order to, what he said, relieve these federal officers that are over there at the Whipple building. Excuse me, not federal officers, but the county officers over at the Whipple building so that they can deal with the crime and the uprising and everything else that took place. This is the National Guard. This is what they did after they got there.
It's almost Valentine's Day.
You heard him say it. You guys want some coffee? The other guy's standing there with a box of pizza. That's what they did. Now, oddly enough, even though Timmy said that they were there to relieve the sheriff, you can still see the sheriff vehicle parked up over there at the front. This was not Donald Trump calling in the National Guard, federalizing them. He didn't, invoke the Insurrection Act, etc. But what Tim Walz supposedly did was bring the National Guard in so that they could be relieved to better handle that situation. This is the beginning of all of that crap that ended up taking place. So, and by the way, ended up confirming, I believe, that this did in fact take place in Hennepin County, and that's the Hennepin County Sheriff that was out there. So there should have been officers available, but they weren't. DHS agents ended up holding this situation down for God only knows how long until local police ended up arriving. That's what they were dealing with. Prior to local PD showing up, it was getting out of control. And I think it goes without saying they're at the hotel because they thought ICE was staying there. Like, I can't express to you the amount of chaos that was taking place. This isn't even the video that I wanted. Where's the video that I want that shows the federal agents actually getting assaulted beforehand? I think it might be this one. Let me see. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Let's go. Nope, this isn't even the one that I was looking for. Nope, this is the one where everybody rolls up. I had a much. Here we go. This is the one.
You got it? Any other form of law coverage?
Looks like this officer's bleeding.
You know you shot some dude with a beanbag at point blank range with banging a pan? Is that a crime now?
No, it's not the time. Honest to God, no, it's not the time. We don't press, sir. You understand? Are you pressed?
Are you pressed? Is only press allowed to be on the street?
Are you pressed?
I'm documenting.
Then back up. Back up now.
Now, before I continue on with this, I want to address this comment. Dalton Wilson, I believe I've seen you around for a while, man, so not here to be offensive, but he says, as a conservative, I'm seeing that exercising my First and Second Amendment will get me killed, and anyone who disagrees with my views will celebrate. Sad. No, sir, you are allowed to exercise your First and Second Amendment. I've been at 2 different protests in the last couple months and have done so. Exercised both my First and Second Amendments and never felt like I was getting killed because I didn't pick fights with cops and I obeyed the lawful orders that they were giving at the time. If you have that fear, in my opinion, it's an unreasonable and irrational fear, sir. I do appreciate your donation, but it seems pretty unreasonable and irrational for you to have that fear. Fox McCloud says in 92, police retreated after being confronted with protesters, and this led to the Rodney King riots. Moral of the story, don't retreat. Facts.
Please get back.
Oh, you know what else I love about this video that maybe some of you caught, but some of you didn't? I want you to see this. They've tried setting up another Chaz zone, the exclusion zone here, clearly by blocking the road off and all that other crap. Look at that.
Please get back.
Now, let's go back to this portion. And this is when it looks like the Bearcat ended up rolling up and started just clearing everybody out. Dirt Track Racing says 26-minute mark, IRT media guy run gives hand signal at the 40-minute mark. ICE agents come from the direction they all left, all bloody. Interesting. Patrick Loudon, they were doing that to another hotel all night. They thought the VP was at it, and he already flew home. Bring mental asylums back. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. Sean Hughes says, basically what I got from all of this is that there's more blood on the governor and the Democrats' hands for telling their people to fight the ICE agents. That would be my opinion.
Get the fuck out of here. Let's go. Back up.
Just letting you know. He's in the white car. The white car. All right. Did everybody go? You know everybody got now.
Get the fuck out of here.
One of you guys asked if those are real shotguns or if they're beanbag guns. All of them are real shotguns, just to be perfectly clear. And the general rule in law enforcement is you don't cross load. Like I won't take a shotgun that I'm using beanbag rounds in and load live lethal shotgun rounds in. Most of the time in your municipalities, sheriff's department, etc., the less than lethal loaded shotguns are going to have orange spray paint on them, or they'll be painted orange, or they'll be Cerakoted orange, so that people are well aware those are the less lethal shotguns. I'm not sure how the feds do it, but I mean, you take that information for what it's worth.
Are you trapped?
So, valid example of what I was talking about. The shotgun could have less than lethal rounds loaded into it in a pinch, and he had to use an actual shotgun for this particular situation. Maybe he didn't have, a less than lethal shotgun available, but it's clearly not painted. It's all black. I would assume, just based off of what I know, that it's loaded with actual lethal shotgun rounds, not less than lethal shotgun rounds. Likely double buck, things of that nature, as some of you guys have pointed out. Yeah, I mean, but
All right, federal officers are coming in. They're clearing the area. They're deploying flashbangs. Tear gas canisters are now being deployed. It's turning into a chaotic scene. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out! Mask. Minneapolis PD now. You okay, brother?
yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, we're so tough. Now, what I was able to find was a local article that actually laid out, in their opinion, the scene of kind of what went down over there. It says protest outside a hotel near U of M campus ends in clash with federal agents. The way they described this situation going through is, first you had local police arrive, but then you also had state police and another agency from Department of Public Safety that ended up going out there. And they actually give a quote. DPS gives a quote in this article. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Unless they updated the article since I last saw it, which it kind of looks like they did. But don't worry, because I pulled that statement from them. While they collaboratively worked to encircle the groups for arrest. So the Minnesota State Patrol and DNR were called to assist Minneapolis police with damage to hotel property at Home 2 Suites Hotel and Universal Ave. While they collaboratively worked to encircle the group for arrest because the demonstration was not peaceful, federal agents arrived without communication and deployed chemical irritants, clearing the group. The State Patrol and DNR are no longer on the scene. So the way that Minnesota DPS kind of put it out was that, hey, we arrived first. It was out of control. The feds didn't coordinate with us. They showed up and cleared the scene with freaking gas and flashbangs, which appears to be what we saw, dispersed the freaking crowd, and then they ended up leaving. So, yeah. Looks like if police were on the scene, they weren't doing a very good job. The videos that I showed earlier of the law enforcement officer standing inside, the feds controlling the building, all that other crap, it didn't look like Minnesota police did a very good job whatsoever. And so the feds called for more backup. They came in with a Bearcat, deployed tear gas, deployed flashbangs, and kicked everybody out of the area. Cam actually ended up releasing a video of the aftermath at some of these locations, and I'll play that for you. There we go. Death to America, kill ICE. F ICE, a pig is a pig, F ICE. Just take a look at the violent crap and ideology these people believe in. Fox McCloud says, Walter Headley, police chief in 1967, he watched his Detroit burn to the ground, and the way he confronted unrest in Miami was to meet it head-on aggressively. Matt, it might be worth looking into past unrest. There's no reason. I mean, yes, I could pull that up and I could show like how you have death and everything else when law enforcement doesn't actually do their job and act accordingly, right? The fact that the feds rolled up, deployed tear gas and chucked flashbangs, and that caused people to go running and that cleared the freaking civil unrest shows that Minneapolis police did not act aggressively in that situation and did not enforce the law when there's property damage to be done. I would think that Hilton could have a very good lawsuit on their hands for the same reason that the people in the church have a good lawsuit on their hands for, again, the police failing to enforce the law and not providing equal protection under it. Sean Hughes says, funny how ICE is operating in all 50 states, but the only problem state is the one with all of the fraud being found. Yeah. And it also happens to be in Minnesota, not with just the fraud, but where you have members of the government, right? Where you have elected officials and appointed officials, such as the police chief, that are speaking out against them. And we saw the same crap over inside Chicago. When you have your elected officials that are putting out false narratives and screaming and losing their dang minds, and you have, you know, police, what was it? The police chief that said, I don't have enough officers to fight ICE. I mean, when you're making statements like that, that's where the problems actually come from. All right. That's what emboldens these libtards to go out and do what they did. Now, the facts of the shooting are going to end up coming out, whether or not he is or isn't justified. But I do believe that they had good reason for contact. I do believe they had good reason to detain and or arrest the guy. I do not believe that the officer was aware that the firearm was removed from his body. It is possible that that SIG went off on its own because of the amount of freaking malfunctions they had, freaking that officer out reasonably, giving him reasonable thought that that shot came from the suspect or another officer fired on the suspect, causing him to pull the trigger. And I do believe that the other officers that fired after the fact, while they might have a viable excuse, it's not going to stand in court. You can't just pump rounds into a body when the threat's already been eliminated. In law enforcement, were likely a conscious act, but when you start backing up and backing away from your suspect and dumping rounds into him, not necessarily the same conscious act. And that's where they're going to get in trouble. That's where they're going to get into it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is my take on what happened. Civil unrest is only going to get worse. Still closely, very, very closely watching the Iran situation. It is getting out of control, along with what China is doing over inside of Iran. They have actually had several large cargo flights that ended up rolling in there over this last weekend. Holy freaking cowballs. You guys aren't going to believe this. Look at this freaking crap. I told you guys what my prediction was, that once it crossed 100, the silver spot price, that would jump up to 115 on its stop up to 125. I'd predicted silver's probably going to hit 125 by the end of the month, and it bounced over 100, and now we're sitting at 115 per troy ounce, ladies and gentlemen. So that's up over, what, $10 just today alone. All right. It's freaking out of control. So You guys are saying no audio. I'm not sure how that happened or how you guys ended up losing audio, but that's okay because we're done here. Ladies and gentlemen, like always, I'll catch you on the next one. And, try to wade through things. I want you guys to be critical thinkers. I want you to assess, analyze situations. I want you to understand, what's going on in all of these different things. And at the end of the day, don't trust SIGs because I don't either. Peace, love, happiness. God bless. I'm out.
Put some input into the slide somewhere. Will it go off again? Will it release? Let's see. That's 3 in a row. Let me take the screw out. Number 4. Let's try it again. Let me show you. Fully functioning striker safety. All right. Should we do it with the magazine again? Let's put the magazine back in, and then we'll try the last one with the magazine out. Handy dandy trigger input tool. We are going to try to, dang, sorry about that. I'm trying to get over a sinus thing and a cough. We're going to try to simulate all right, here we go. Again, we are roughly, as we saw on the tabletop, I'm guessing we're roughly 1 millimeter to less than 1 millimeter of engagement on